In this video, I want to walk you through the evolution of ASP.NET. In 1996, Microsoft released a framework called as the ASP, which stands for Active Server Pages. It is also known as the Classic ASP. With Classic ASP, Microsoft made it possible to have server-side scripting to dynamic web pages. The biggest revolution came when Microsoft released .NET Framework. Microsoft introduced ASP.NET Web Forms in 2002. This made creation of web page similar to creation of Windows form. There were few downsides with web forms, like they tried to implement stateless web as stateful, and to do that, they had to make a lot of changes to make sure the web pages retain their states or their values automatically. View states contained those values, and that resulted in a lot of data being generated and transferred with each request, sometimes even if it was not required. Web Forms was the first version to introduce code behind. Now, code behind is a great idea, but it makes testing difficult because one line we're reading from the database and in the next line we're updating the UI. Another common issue was page lifecycle. When requesting page, a number of events were fired. Getting to know all of these events was quite a bit of task. Although there were few downsides of web forms, they were greatly successful to get site up and running quickly. Couple of years later in 2009, Microsoft officially released first version of ASP.NET MVC, and they tried to overcome most of the problems with the web forms. It has emphasis on separation of concern. MVC code is typically much easier to write unit tests for. MVC was the first edition they released as open source. Now, a lot of developers did not like MVC framework because it had its own flaws too. When it was created, it was built on top of the components which were already created for web forms, because of which it was closely tied to system.web, which was tied to IIS and eventually to Windows. On the other hand, the web is evolving quickly, and hence Microsoft had to keep MVC with everything that was changing. Also, MVC was built before cloud came into picture. Even though a lot of MVC applications are running on the cloud, but still it was not built with cloud in mind. And then in 2016, Microsoft released a new version of .NET, which is ASP.NET Core. Now, ASP.NET Core is built on top of the new .NET Core framework. .NET Core is the very first cross-platform version of .NET, and hence it is not just tied to the Windows. Also, ASP.NET Core, as compared to the old ASP.NET MVC, is not tied to the .NET framework assemblies like system.web. Let's take a look at few advantages of ASP.NET Core. Firstly, ASP.NET MVC had dependency on IIS, but ASP.NET Core has no longer that requirement of only IIS. There is also a unification between MVC and Web API. Earlier they were different because ASP.NET MVC had dependency on system.web, but now since that dependency is gone, there is no reason to keep MVC and Web APIs separated since they have the same syntax and everything else. Dependency injection, which is the ability to plug dependencies in our code, is now a core feature of the platform. Although previous version had support for dependency injection, but ASP.NET Core has been built with dependency injection in mind. ASP.NET Core has a modular request pipeline. We will take a look at the middlewares that we will use in this pipeline and see how that works in the upcoming videos. NuGet has also been integrated deeply into ASP.NET Core. Everything in ASP.NET Core is a package and they are managed by NuGet. And also ASP.NET is fully open source and cross-platform. So in this video, we have taken a look at how ASP.NET has been evolved throughout the time, and we also saw the advantages of ASP.NET MVC Core.